everybody. Happy Wednesday. Hope everybody's having a fantastic week. Cheers to making it halfway through. It is December already. How crazy is this? This year has just been insane. For those of you who are new to these happy hours, I've been doing these for the last, 6 months or so now, meeting with a different woman from the automotive industry, typically trades women in various areas all over the automotive industry. And I'm super excited this week to be joined by another incredible woman. I've known her for many years now. She started out as a technician. She's been a service manager. She's ASE certified. She had her own parts store for a long time. Now she works for RepairPal and does a ton of really awesome stuff with them. She's a mentor and a leader and just an incredibly phenomenal woman. And I'm really excited to have her share with you guys. It looks like she's joining in right now. We just got to wait for the interwebs to connect us. But I'm really excited for you to meet her. Hi, Jill. How are you?
How you doing? All right. That's really big. Let me move back.
I know. It does weird things when it's two people.
Yeah, you're like, whoa.
How are you, my dear?
I am good.
Good.
Kind of weathering the year as best as possible and looking forward to hopefully some better things next year.
Here's to hoping.
Yeah, for sure.
How has COVID been for you? Have you been just mostly working from home? Has it been?
Yeah, just mostly working from home. Our entire company went remote. I worked remote most of the time anyway, but now the entire company is remote. And I went from traveling about 40% of the time, which you can totally relate to I am home 100% of the time. This last weekend, we left and slept somewhere else for 5 nights, and that
Oh my
was
gosh.
awesome. Then we hadn't
Nice.
done that since March.
It's so how does that feel? Like, I don't know about you, but for me, like being home all of this time has been like, wow, like I haven't sat still this long
Yeah,
in
no.
like most of my adult life. And
Hmm.
and like I
Me
kind of like
either.
it and kind of don't all at the same time.
Yeah, me too. I'm kind of like nervous about possibly going back out there and resuming. Like, God, how am I going to do that again? Because I like my house. I like being home. My fiance, I don't know if she likes me being home actually, but
We'll have to ask.
we'll ask. Yeah, for
Oh,
sure. But our company's doing really well, and can't really complain because my fiance's a teacher. I'm working for RepairPal. Our income has not been affected like so
that's
many people
awesome.
out there. So I can't really complain,
That's
in
good.
terms of riding this out. We're
Yeah,
doing
thank
it,
goodness.
thank goodness, fairly comfortably.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I wanna talk about RepairPal a little bit, but before we get into RepairPal, I wanna like go back in time a
Yeah.
little bit and share your story with everybody because a lot of folks who are following may not know you or have met you before, and part of the purpose of these happy hours is to really
Yeah.
introduce everybody to more of the amazing women in the industry. And you are like one of the I bow down to you. You're amazing. And I would love for people to hear your story of how you started out.
Yeah, it's kind of a crazy story. And, we've talked about it a few times and we have some like, similarities. So I went to college, I graduated. I am a certified recreational therapist, which is pretty meaningless right now in my current role, but I did it. And, um, and started out in that field and graduated, and I was working at a home for adults who had long-term psychiatric problems, locked unit, therapy. They have physical therapy, they have occupational therapy, they have all different therapies. And a recreational therapist, what you do is you plan the whole rest of their day. So these therapies that they do are maybe good for like 2 or 3 hours of the day, but what do they do for like the other 10 hours of the day? So it
Yeah.
was my job to kind of do that and for them. And I did that for a few years. And It was just not for me. And I had a Volkswagen Bug at the time, and I had an uncle who owned an auto shop, and my Volkswagen Bug always broke down.
Shocking.
And yeah, shocking. But and I would take it to him, and he would make me fix it. He bought me an Idiot's Guide to Volkswagen Repair.
Best book
And
ever.
he said, if I fix it, I'm going to charge you. But you can go over there in the corner of the shop and fix your own vehicle, and I will help you
I love it.
with it. But, he's like, if you own this car, you should know how to fix it. Because at the time I was living in Southern California, and I was driving between Northern and Southern California. And I have some pretty hairy stories about the Volkswagen Bug. Having to stop, every 30 miles to put 3 quarts of oil in it to keep going for 30 more miles. Things like that, using a pantyhose to tie around the belt because the belt broke off,
Yep.
things.
The only car that'll work on. It's amazing, but it'll work.
Yeah. And so one night it was late at night, and I was watching late night TV, and I wasn't happy with my job. It was crazy in a lot of ways. And I saw a commercial, and it said, you too can become an automotive technician. Call 1-800 blah blah blah. And I was like, I probably could, right? So I did. And I enrolled, and there was an 18-month program, and it was like a half-day program, and they only wanted you to go half day and go 18 months. So I convinced them that I was a college graduate and that I could do it in 9 months. Like, I don't only want to go to school 4 hours a day. If there's 8 hours available, I want to do this. So I did. Graduated second in my class.
Nice.
And much to the chagrin of my parents and just about everybody in my life, they were like, what are you doing? I cannot believe that this is what you're doing. To the point where my dad was like, I'm not going to support this. So I paid for it myself. He paid for college, so I guess that's fair.
Sure.
I paid for it myself, and I set off on my way. My first job out of college was at a Chevy dealer in Southern California. I was their smog tech at the time, and until they it was not a great dealership. They were doing a lot of bad stuff there. So I did that for probably 6 months, and then I moved back up to the Bay Area. And at the time, in the Bay Area, there were several very prominent woman-owned shops, but I was too afraid to go there and approach them because they were like these gods, these goddesses,
Like, ooh,
and I was like, oh, I'm not gonna go. I'm not gonna go talk to them because who am I? So it was kind of funny. I was working at a auto shop. I was a smog tech there, and I was, doing some things. And this woman walks in to the shop, and she hands me her card, and she said, "What are you doing here? Come and talk to me tonight." And it was one of the women from the shop. It was a shop called Phoenix Automotive, and it was in Oakland, and a woman named Pam Spence. And I started working for her.
That's
and
awesome.
that was pretty great. And they want to know what you're drinking, Bogey.
They want to know what I'm drinking. I'm drinking whiskey, per usual. Yeah. Come on.
I'm drinking kombucha with some fun stuff in it. So
nice.
Nice.
Tasty and good for you.
Yes, exactly. So
I gotta ask real quick to rewind. What was it your parents weren't stoked about?
Well, my dad said women don't work on cars. Why would you want to do that and put yourself in the position with all those guys?
Yeah.
And he's like, you've never done this, because I was not into cars. My Volkswagen Bug was my first, any interest in fixing it. And I really wasn't super interested in fixing it. I just didn't have any money to fix it. So I had to.
Right. So what made you go from I have no interest? Because I was kind of the same way, right? Like I went from I have no interest in cars to working on my Bug because I had to oh my gosh, I love this. I want to make a career out of this. What made that spark happen when you saw the advertisement? You were like, yeah, I can be an automotive technician.
Yeah, because my uncle owned an auto shop and he'd talk to me a lot about it, and I was pretty good at fixing it. I could get my spark plugs to stay in. I could do all those things.
Which on bugs is a challenge.
It's a challenge. They usually just blow out, right?
Oh
So
my
I
gosh,
could
I've
get
got
them to
stories
stick
about that.
back in. Oh yeah, no, there's lots of stories about how I got them to stay in.
Right. Oh my
You
gosh.
know, so I just I was fixing my car. It seemed like, it was the one thing about fixing cars that I still like to this day is that when you do something, it fixes something, right?
Yes.
Like the work that I do now is just like all out there, and there's not like a tangible like, hey, I put that water pump on, now it doesn't leak water.
Yes.
That there's something to be said for that, your direct action.
Yes. Oh, I agree
Yeah,
so much. There's nothing like that feeling when you fix a thing and you're like, I did
yeah.
it. I did a thing.
And then my friends would see me fix their car, and then they were like, hey, something's wrong here. So I had several friends, and we bought idiots guides for their cars too.
Nice.
And then we
Nice.
would like, play around with these cheap tools that we bought to do some stuff on their cars. And I didn't like what I was doing, and I couldn't think of anything better. So I was like, hey, if there's an advertisement, why don't I do that?
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
All right. So you worked for this woman's shop
Yeah.
and became a better technician and
Hmm.
started growing up in the industry.
And she actually said at that time, you should work in the front.
Okay.
You should be my service manager, because you can articulate really well what's wrong with the cars in layman's terms. Because I didn't grow up with all in cars, so I could break it down really easily for them. So I worked half the time as a technician, and half the time I ran her shop when she was gone, and
At the
moved in.
time, how did you feel about that? Because I feel like a lot of women get told you shouldn't be in the shop, you should be up front. And some are pleased with that because
Yeah,
they enjoy the path that it takes them down, and then others are really not okay with it. I was
yeah,
hugely irritated by it when people would tell me it when I was a
yeah.
tech. Now
And
I'm
at first,
grateful, but
yeah. And at first I was like, what, you don't think I can do this? She goes, oh no, you can do this. She goes, but here's the deal. She goes, when you're 40 years old and you're going to have to pick up that big tire and stick it on the car, you're not going to want to do it. And you're going to make more money in the front. And both of those things are true.
and hence the challenges of finding technicians.
Yeah, because within a couple more years, I was mostly working in the front of the shop. I've always maintained my certifications. I always make sure that I'm technically up to date. But I started doing a lot of running shops, and a little bit of repair here and there, just to kind of keep that muscle from atrophying. But yeah, but that is something a lot of women get told. At
Yeah.
dealerships, like I've been a dealership service writer, and I was always like the top service advisor. It was easy. People trusted me way more. They gave me a lot more trust than they would the guys.
I think there's a really big piece to the being able to break it into layman's terms,
Hmm.
right? I think that's like, and you know this as well as I do. It's like it's such a technical field.
Hmm.
There's so many complicated words, and the biggest challenge that we have between repair folks and consumers is the miscommunication. And when you can put things in English for people, then it
Hmm.
takes away that whole layer of scary.
Yeah, it does. It does. And then they buy,
Right.
and they're much more likely to buy, and then you can explain it, and you don't, the typical, I don't mansplain things because I'm not a man.
All right. So what happens next in
So
your journey?
so what happens next is I just kind of go on. I'm a I worked for GM. I'm a district service manager for them. I go back. I rent for a few more years, and then I get promoted in that shop, and then I'm now the service manager again because I was just trying to go back and just rent on cars because I didn't want all that responsibility. But then I got promoted again, and I was like, oh, okay. So I was
You
like,
just can't help but get promoted, Jill.
no, I just can't like getting promoted. I'd go back and I'd start to wrench for a little bit, and then they would always call me in the front to explain things, and I'm like, well, my you get tired of standing on a concrete floor all day. So eventually, I went to work for Mercedes, or for a company called Dynan Engineering, and I didn't
know you worked for Dynan.
I worked for Dynan for 8 years. Yeah. So I started out as a shop foreman, and then I became I moved into the front to be a service advisor. It paid better, and it was there quite a long time until the internet, the first internet crash, when everything kind of crashed around the very first one in the late 90s.
Yeah.
And at that time, we were on a growth path. When everything was booming then, I mean, we had kids coming in with M3s and a suitcase full of cash and doing, $100,000 in upgrades on their M3.
Yeah.
So that was fun. And then when it crashed, all that went away. So Dynan had to downsize. So they offered really nice, like 6-month severance packages to people to basically leave. And at the time, my mom was sick, so I decided, like, I'm out. So I did, and I left. And and I stayed out of work for about 6 months, and then I went back to another dealership, and eventually ended up at Mercedes-Benz of San Francisco, and was there for a little bit. And I was working in parts. And it was my first time ever working in parts, and they brought me in to bridge the gap between parts and service, because usually in a dealership they're battling, and they were like, okay, so if we hire a service person, they'll be able to kind of hopefully smooth that out, and I did.
Nice.
I did, and I worked there, and then there's this thing that happens where women just walk in. So this woman walks in. And she says, she says, hey, I need somebody to give me advice. I want to start a shop, and I'm looking for a consultant. Do you do that? And I'm like at the parts counter. I'm like, well, tell me about it. And she starts telling me, and I'm like, I could do that. And her idea was to start a woman-owned shop, and to put a nail salon or something in it, and kind of do this. It was her college project. Okay. And she had no automotive knowledge at all, so she needed somebody to set the shop up, the back of the shop. So my first thing I did for her was set the back of the shop up. I literally bought lifts, put lifts in. I hired her technicians. I did all that. She paid me as a consultant. After about 6 months, she asked me, how I liked Mercedes-Benz, and I said it pays well. And she was like, would you consider investing in coming here? And at the time it was going pretty well. Yeah. And I said, okay. So I did. And we were able to grow that shop. I did a lot. At that shop, I did turn wrenches a lot, just because we had 2 technicians, and we were really one of the only women-owned shops in the area, and we're super busy. We went from like 175 the first year to 400 the second year to 600 the third year to 800 in the 4th year, and I left after the 4th year. The 5th year, I believe if I was there, we would have done $1 million. We were just like going. And this is with only 2.5 technicians, basically. We're just jamming. We're super busy. Unfortunately, the business partnership didn't work out. It got really bad, very bad. And I had to make a choice. And that choice was either stay with the business or preserve my mental health. And I decided to leave. So I did. And I went back to a mini dealer, just writing service. I was like, I just need something. It was such an intense 4 years that I was like, I just need something that I can do in my sleep.
Yeah.
And I can write service for European cars in my sleep, like no problem. And make money doing it. Like that's easy for me. You know, and a lot of crazy stuff happened because when I left my business, she owed me a lot of money. And, you know, so, and I just kind of had to let that go and just realize like, hey, that was an expensive lesson, but lesson learned. And went to work for a mini dealer, wasn't super happy. And I decided that I needed to get out of the industry. I didn't want anything to do with it. And I wanted to get out. So what I started just looking for jobs, and I got a pretty good job offer from Avis Budget Rental Car to manage their fleet at San Francisco Airport, be their director of fleet operations, which is still in the industry, but not in the customer facing automotive industry. So I was going to start that, but I really wasn't super happy about it. So, you know, they were doing all this background checking. It was going to be a month before like I started, and I had already quit my job. So I was just home hanging out. And I was trying to, and so I was still looking on Craigslist to see if there was anything interesting or looking through ads and things. This was like 8 years ago. And I came across an ad that said, are you an ASE certified master technician who wants to do something different? And I was like, this ad was written for me because yes, I am. So I responded, and it was RepairPal, and they explained what they were doing, and it sounded really interesting. And I was like, I can do this. And you know, from my business, I was also financially like in the toilet. Seriously in the toilet, about $315,000 upside down. And I figured, and with RepairPal was a startup, and there was only 11 people. It was employee number 12, and they offered me the job at 50% of what I was going to get paid at Avis Budget. And I was, you know, when he called, made me the offer, he told me, and I was like, can we do any better? And he's like, we're a startup, like this is it. And I was like, all right, I'll do it. And he's like, are you sure you don't want to, like, you know, this was on a Friday, think about it over the weekend, and you know, let me know Monday. And I'm like, no, because I'm a whiteboard person. I'm like pros and cons, and if I pro and con this out, I'm not going to say yes because I owe so much money.
So what made you say yes?
Like, you know, it was just, I thought it was a good idea. And it was something that the industry really kind of needed. And I don't know, something just told me to say yes. So I did. Luckily, my fiance, who's my girlfriend at the time, was like, that's what you want to do it. And I did. And that was 8 years ago. And I started there just as a contractor, actually. And then after 2 months, I became an employee and a certification manager. And then I became the director of the automotive group. And then I became the senior director of sales and marketing. And now I'm the VP of sales. And I'm also the president of RepairPal Express, which is a subsidiary company now of RepairPal.
You just can't help but getting promoted. Every time I talk to Jill, she's gotten a new promotion. She's doing something new. She's moving up. But that,
people ask me why I don't play softball anymore. It's because then I always become the manager.
But what an amazing gamble you took, just trusting your gut. And I feel like that's been a recurrent theme through your life, right? You took this chance on, I'm going to go to automotive school. You took a chance on starting a business. You took a chance on taking a huge pay cut for something that just felt right in your gut. What do you attribute that that ability, like people would look from the outside and go, oh, that's fearless, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know that it necessarily is because there's always a ton of
No,
fear involved.
no, I'm totally, I'm totally afraid a lot of the time. And when I make these decisions, but I think it's just being able to like put that fear aside and realize like fear is an emotion. If something is invoking an emotion in you, it shouldn't be ignored, right? So if I go into a situation, and especially these situations, and there's like scary things and I'm fearful of it, that I really need to look at that. And is it what am I afraid of? Financial insecurity. I was already like, I figured if I wasn't making any money, nobody could get any money from me, right? If I don't have it, you can't get it. So if I was making more money, they were just going to figure out how to come in and take it anyway, right?
Fair. It's a fair point.
Yeah. And, unfortunately through that process, before that, before I was before the auto shop, I was married, owned a house in San Jose. Unfortunately, owning the shop and all the pressure of that, it tanked my marriage. And I came out the other side, and you think these things are really, really bad, but I can tell you, like, my life is in a way better place than it was. And I'm much happier, I'm much freer. And, I have things. I bought a house in Oakland last year. That is something that I never thought, never in a million years would I ever be able to do that again because of all this wreckage from the past. And I did.
So I want to talk about women in auto care because I
Mm-hmm.
know, like, so for those who don't know, Women in Auto Care is an organization. It's part of the Car Care Council. Jill and I are both members and have been very involved over the years.
Mm-hmm.
You've been incredibly involved and been a big part of their mentorship program,
Mm-hmm.
both on the giving and the receiving end, I think, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and and that was a really instrumental thing in your life.
Mm-hmm. For sure. For sure. And talking about fear again, um, we were walking into Women in Auto Care was like walking into, for me, is like this room of rock stars. Like Bogey was there, Jody DeVere was there, all these people were there, and I was like afraid of them. Like they intimidated me, like, and the women in there intimidated me. I did not feel like I belonged amongst them. And now those women are like my legit friends. Like I wouldn't go to Phoenix and not see Bogey. And and so when Women in Auto Care, like years ago, there was a mentorship program. Well, there still is, and now it's a very robust mentorship program. And sitting there, I came out of just the day-to-day shop world, and I now work in a startup culture and in a kind of more corporate environment. And I didn't really understand it, the politics and how it all works. And I'd get blindsided by things and I'd be like, this is crazy. So I decided I need a mentor. So I've been going to their meetings. We prior to COVID, we had 2 conferences a year, and I'd kind of, I'd been to. This was my third meeting. I decided I needed a mentor, and I looked around the room, and I decided my mentor should be the person in the room who intimidates me the most. And there were 2 women in there. One of them, her name was Tammy Tecklenburg, and the other one was Amy Bonder. And Amy Bonder worked for Firestone, Bridgestone. She was a VP of sales. And Tammy was like a VP of marketing for Spectrum Brands, which is like Turtle Wax and all that. And, I actually got along better with Amy, but Tammy was way more intimidating. And if you ever meet Tammy and we couldn't be more different. So I called her and I was like, I didn't even know that, I just got her name off the website and I was like, I'm gonna call her. So I called her. And I was pretty sure she wouldn't know who I was. So, and I said, hey, I need a mentor. And she was the head of the mentor program. Can you be my mentor? And she was like, yes, I can. And, you know, we started off on this journey, and Tammy lives in Connecticut. Tammy is very put together, and she has this executive presence, and she dresses to the nines. And yeah, she scared me. She scared me for years, even though she was still my mentor. Now, Tammy is one of my best friends, and Tammy's actually, if we can ever have a wedding, she is going to be my maid of honor in the wedding. You know, so she's made such an incredible um, impact on my life. And, you know, through her, I've met Laura Suave, who is an executive with Pep Boys. And the three of us are really good friends now. And these are women like I couldn't be more different. But you know, what I found is that I don't learn a lot from people who are like me. I learn a lot from people who are not like me.
That's a
And
powerful statement. Very,
mhm,
very true.
yeah, like I can, you know, I had my whole group you know, I've learned a lot from everybody at Women in Auto Care, and there is a definite group of women that like I just get along with way better. And I do learn lessons from them, but we kind of are on the same wavelength. Like
Right.
Tammy is on a totally different wavelength, and I've learned so much. And, you know, being able to walk through that fear, and she could have said no, and that would have been fine. Yeah, but she didn't. And you know, I'm eternally grateful that she didn't. You know, she's walked me through when as I said, I got paid 50% of what, now it just sounds absurd. 50%
Right.
of what I should have been getting paid. And
It was a little absurd, but it
it
worked out.
was.
It
It
worked
worked
out
out.
really
You
well.
know, one thing I can tell you, if you do take a job like that, the slog up the hill to getting paid what you're worth is a long one. And she coached me through so many salary negotiations that now I make I make 2.5 times what I would have made. So it's worked out for me. You know, every time I go in to my review, you know, we have a form, basically a form that I fill out, you know, that I go through, and these are the things I've accomplished. So that way, when I sit down and I ask for more money, I have like really tangible things that I've done that were not a part of my core duties. And every single time I've gotten a raise, I've never gone through a cycle without them. And I've actually gotten raises that were like 30%, 20%, 10%, not just the
The
standard
cost of living,
3%.
right?
Yeah,
Can
yeah.
we dig into that a little bit? Because I feel like that's a recurrent theme that I hear from not just women in the industry, but
Oh,
from
hey, there's
everybody.
Tammy.
I saw
I'm like, oh God.
it. Tammy's good people. I feel like I hear from women and men a lot, like not knowing how to ask for a raise, how to ask for what they're worth, how to get over that fear, to be able to say like, I did this, I accomplished this, I'm
Hmm.
worth this. Can you talk a little bit more about that process for
Yeah.
you?
For me, what it is, and I spend like right now I'm in like kind of an evaluation process about the year and what I did and like what my goals are going to be for next year. And when I meet with the CEO of our company, who's my direct supervisor now, I talk to him about like what does he want to see happen next year, and then I kind of build the roadmap from there, and I keep that roadmap. And then when I do something else that's not on my roadmap, because I figure if I just follow my roadmap that he gave to me and that we've built together, I'm just doing my job. If I want an above average raise, I need to do a little more than my job. So I have all the things, and you have to perfectly execute on your core comp on your core. But then I do other things, and you know, and I make sure to keep track of that. You know, people talk about documentation, and you know, when I was a service writer, I'd tell my technicians if it's not documented, it's not true. So if you didn't write it down,
Didn't happen.
it didn't happen. So I think that is a skill that I've taken, that actually Tammy's, we've talked about it a lot, and now I do it for myself. In the beginning, she walked me through it. Now I can do it myself, and I do share it with other people, and just keep a documented history about your accomplishments, because if you don't, like, you don't remember what you did last January, and you don't remember March, and we all have such busy lives. So I literally, when I do something that I feel like is significant and is outside of my job description, I write it down. So that way, when I sit down for my review, which we have a pre-review, I go over it and I say, here's what I did. Here were my goals. I'm within, or this is what I didn't execute on very well. And here's my plan for next year. It works.
I think that's huge, and I think it's something that so many people need to hear.
Mm-hmm.
There's a mental component to that too, though, right? Like, there's the documentation, there's setting the goals, there's achieving beyond the goals, and all of those. Like, that's huge, and I love your worksheet. Like, I think that's just so phenomenal. How did you get yourself mentally over the fear of asking for more?
The first time I asked for more and I got it, it was 40%. Then from there, here's a funny story about that, right? So I get 40%, then the next year I get like 10%, which is cool. And then the next year I get 5%. And I call up Tammy and I'm like, hey, I only got 5%. She's like, that's great. And I'm like, no, it's not. She goes, raises are like 3% usually. Yeah. Like, you just because, and I was like,
just because you got 40% the first time.
I was like, oh, shoot, 40 and then 10. And I was like, I complained about it. And you know what? The funny thing is, I complained about it and I didn't get more money, but I did get more equity. But it's just not being afraid to put it out there about the value that you add. I started out as running the certification program at RepairPal, and one of the gaps that I saw that wasn't happening is the industry awareness needed to happen in order for us to grow. So at that time, we only had 100 shops. Nobody knew who we were, and everybody who did hated us. And now we have 2,700 shops, and I'm meeting with some of the biggest auto shop chains in the country who want to come and be a part of our network. And sometimes I get to tell them no, and that's powerful. Like, no, like, your practices don't meet our standards.
One of the things that people who don't know you may not know is your commitment to quality and and really improving the automotive industry.
Yeah.
And there's a ton of awful stereotypes about the industry, and there's a lot of really crappy shops out there that fulfill that stereotype.
Oh yeah, they totally have earned it for us.
Right. And then there's the other side. Like, we know that there is a ton of amazing shops and amazing technicians and amazing folks in the industry who are really doing right by people. And you've been really committed throughout your career to highlighting that and increasing the number of those good shops. So we haven't talked about it at all. So tell us a little bit about what RepairPal is and why you're so passionate about it and what you think its contribution is to the industry.
Yeah. So RepairPal, what we do is we have a fair price estimator for auto repair. That's my product. I'm constantly working on it, constantly improving it. And so you can put in your year, make, model, your zip code, and it will tell you what a fair price for that repair is in your industry. And I want to emphasize that it's a fair price. It's not a cheap price, because the other thing that RepairPal does is we have a network of certified shops, and we thoroughly vet our certified shops. Like, they are truly certified. We make sure your ASCs are in order. We check to make sure the techs have gone to training. We make sure that you have the right tools and equipment that you can actually do the job. And we survey their most recent customers to make sure that people are happy with them. And not until after that do we even list them on the site. And this is like so important to me, because I've worked at a lot of different shops and I've left a lot of shops just because the shit that was going on, I didn't believe in it. I believe like if you thoroughly check out a car, there's things that need to be fixed. You
Yeah.
don't have to lie about it. Like look at the car and get to know your customer. Like, is it somebody who wants that car perfect and never wants it to break down? Is it somebody who is fine driving around with some raggedy stuff and they just need to get from here to there? Like know your customer and then you can sell to them, because there's people out there, most people don't want their car to break down.
Right. Nobody wants that.
So if you present in a way that highlights like the benefit and value of what you're selling and what they need to do to make sure that they don't break down, like that's powerful. And that is it's kind of how I built my career. And those are the shops that we look for with RepairPal. So we make sure that the shops that we put in are shops, my final approval is, would I send my mother there by herself? And I've had to dig my mother out of a few unfortunate situations with auto repair shops, mostly dealers, all dealers, actually.
All dealers.
All dealers.
I don't know if we can say all dealers.
Well, no,
I think there's good ones.
No, not all dealers. The two times I've had to unwind situations were both dealerships.
Ugh, yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. But I think, and what I've learned, and I mean, I knew this before, there's a few bad apples out there, and the saying that one bad apple spoils the whole bunch, totally true, because the majority of the industry is good, hardworking, honest people who want to help people. Yeah. So you have these yahoos out there who are not doing it right, and they give a bad reputation to everybody. So with RepairPal, we work hard to highlight those people and to send them, good customers who need their car repaired. I'm pretty proud that in the last month, Consumer Reports, our shops are listed as the certified shops on Consumer Reports.
Nice.
That's like a big win for us. They vetted us for about 3 years and really went through our systems, and they've had our estimator on there for a while, but they never listed our shops. And the good work from our partnership team, like they climbed that hill, and now if you look on their certified shops, those are RepairPal shops.
That's awesome.
Awesome.
What do you think it is that is like the biggest challenge for the industry in overcoming those bad apples, those bad stereotypes? Like what's the biggest challenge? What can we do to overcome that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of that is going to be taken care of by the technology that is on vehicles. Today, they're getting harder and harder to work on. So if these shops are not investing in those things, they're not going to even be able to play.
Yeah.
So if they're not investing, they're not going to be able to play. And I think just consumers being aware of what's going on, educating themselves. Like you do a lot of car care clinics. That's amazing. When I was involved with the shop, we did a lot of them, and just educating people and asking questions, like teaching consumers to ask questions.
Yeah.
You go to the doctor and you ask a million questions. He doesn't just say, oh, I need to amputate your leg, and you go, okay. Right?
Right. No, absolutely. Absolutely. I compare us to doctors all the time. I know you do as well. Like we're car doctors, right? And and there's a lot of similarity, and yet doctors don't have the same negative reputation and awful stigma that automotive shops do and auto repair folks do. And I hear even from technicians saying all shops are crooks. They're all out to rip you off. They're all out to take advantage of you. I'm like, oh, how do we get over that stereotype? Like, how do we move beyond that and like help consumers understand the complexity of today's vehicles and that not everybody's out to get them? Like, how do we fix this?
Yeah, I mean, if I knew. I mean, that's what we try to do at Repair Pal. And I think, being out there and talking about it and, just the next generation, because, there didn't used to be as much transparency and people were not as connected. So if, you know, if these things happen, I feel like bringing them to light. And, in California, like there's the Bureau of Automotive Repair. I actually had a meeting with them the other day, and they said that their number of complaints has significantly increased. And, so it's hard. Like, I know, like I quit several shops and went other places because that was going on. But a lot of people aren't in that position. Luckily, I'm living in the San Francisco Bay Area. There's a
Ton
bajillion
of
auto
shops.
shops,
Right.
right? So you could just move around. Like it's,
Yeah.
um, I
Well,
think
here's a
just,
novel way
yeah.
that people can use RepairPal. If you're a
Hmm.
technician out there and you're not happy with the shop that you're at,
Yeah, look at our
not
shops. They're always
mm,
looking.
look at RepairPal and look at their shops. Absolutely. So it's a
Hmm.
tool in multiple different ways.
Yeah, I never thought about that, but that is true because our shops we monitor our shops, we monitor their customer service. We have a robust partner platform with CarMax and USAA and Verizon and Consumer Reports. We have like 40 partners that thoroughly have vetted us. So we have a lot of internal support that if a consumer has a problem, they call into us and we deal with the shop, including we remove about, I don't remember what the percentage is, but it's 2 to 3% of our network a year for
Oh,
bad
wow.
behavior. So,
For bad behavior.
for bad behavior, like not, charging too much or just some very bizarre things.
Okay,
But
you saying that makes me have to ask some very bizarre things. What is the most bizarre thing that you have had to dismiss a shop for?
oh my goodness, just, like crimes.
Really?
For crimes that have happened, that they've brought up, and we have a process now that we've put in place where we continuously kind of go back and look, and see. But we've had some interesting things happen. Let's just put it that way.
I'm
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. But we have a whole internal support team that handles that. And the consumer can call in. Sometimes the shop calls in and complains about the customer. And, sometimes the partner has an issue with the shop, or there's all kinds of ways. But we've gotten really good at, figuring out what the real is.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
have to admit when I was in I had my shop and RepairPal kind of first came on the scene, I was like, this is bullshit. like like I was so unhappy with it because I
Hmm.
thought that it was going to be this way for customers to come in and say you're charging too much
Yeah.
and that it was going to be based on some unrealistic
Hmm.
price or dollar
Yeah.
amount. So um I've been pleased to
Yeah.
learn more and see how RepairPal has grown and how much that is like the antithesis. Like RepairPal is
Yeah.
such a awesome support for consumers and for shops.
Hmm.
How does the estimator work? Because I know there's a lot of skepticism from industry folks. So if there's
Yeah.
anybody watching who's industry, like I
Sure.
want you to hear how this actually works.
Yeah. So our estimator is built with industry data. So the back end of the estimator, the labor times come from motor. And we actually do a little, depending on the area, we might bump the motor time here and there. We've done like extensive research of the whole United States. So like in the San Francisco Bay Area, it's outrageous. So the labor times get a little bit of a bump. We base the parts prices on OE list price. We can get that through motor. We're right now working to, we have an additional aftermarkets parts feed that we compare it to, and then we default to the higher price. We have a couple other parts feeds that I think we'll be integrating this year, so it'll have, a wider range and a bigger breadth. Our labor rates are based on every zip code. So we've gone through and done extensive research about what the labor rate should be in your zip code. If you want to know what it is, you should go on, look at your zip code, and then you can put in general diagnosis. It'll tell you what the average labor rate is for your area. And it's variable. So BMW has a higher labor rate than, say, Honda. So you can kind of go around it and play with that. And the one thing for our shops that we do too is we stand behind our estimators for shops and consumers. So if you go to a RepairPal certified shop, you say, hey, RepairPal says that water pump is $300. It's not, it's $5. And what the shop should do is charge you the $3, and then they submit to us at estimate feedback at RepairPal. It actually comes to my team. We do a quick evaluation of it, and if we're wrong, we pay it. And we pay probably 80% of the time. Wow. And then we submit to Motor to let them know that is wrong. And then in their next quarterly update, they fix it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So there's this whole interworking of behind the scenes, improvements to the industry and improvements to pricing. And yeah.
Oh yeah, no, we just that's a big part of my job. We're about to do a big labor rate update. We're looking for additional parts feeds. I mean, we're constantly trying to improve it to make it better. And if you compare our estimator to other estimators out there, we're usually at 10 to 20% higher. And the reason why that is because we actually figure out our labor rates by zip code. Most of the other estimators out there break the country into sections and then apply a labor rate to those sections. Now, that doesn't work. We have areas in New Jersey where on one side of the river, the labor rate is $80, and on the other side, it's $110. And totally. if geographically, it's only less than a mile apart.
Yeah, and when that happens, and those types of estimators, it creates the feeling of being taken advantage of, even when you're not being taken advantage of, because you may be at a reputable, fantastic shop who's not lying to you, who's giving you fair pricing, but you look at some estimator that's looking at a national average rather than specific to your area, and the prices are off. I appreciate that RepairPal has a range, and I don't mean this to wind up sounding like a commercial, but I think it's really important what RepairPal does, that you guys offer a range of what it is. And my favorite part is that at the bottom it says this is based on without a visual inspection of knowing what additional parts might be needed, because that's the other area where people will come in and say, well, my water pump was supposed to cost this much money. Why is it so much more? Well, we did your timing belt too, or we did your,
you had to do all these other things. That's one of the big things that I'm working on, that I'll be working on in 2021 is, we have some associated repairs, but be making that feature way more robust so that you can say, oh, it's a water pump. And now you can actually add timing belt. And then, hopefully next year you'll be able to add tensioners and drive belts and things like that. That's just awesome. So that, you can sit there and use it with the consumer and even just pull it up and be like, look, here's what, you need. You need all these things.
Yeah. Because
I think a lot of the black eye is also, like you said, is just miscommunication. Most, now I think the better shops are evolving and they have people who are trained to be in the front and they know how to interact and to sell auto repair to consumers. But in a lot of shops, you have the technician, the owner, who's a technician, who's selling the repair and who doesn't have those skills. They're super skilled technicians, but that skill and this skill, that's totally different. And a lot of that, I'll sit and chat with somebody all day. Well, we could talk in circles, because at the end I want them to authorize the repair. So I'll just keep going until I get my way, which I do in life anyway.
Shocking.
Ask my mom and my fiance. She's going to keep circling around trying to find the angle.
Everything is sales. Everything is sales.
For sure.
That's awesome. So we have 6 minutes before Instagram kicks us off. So we only have an hour.
All right.
So are there any other like fun, exciting things that you've got going on? Other projects that you're involved with? Things that we haven't touched on yet that you'd like to share?
Yeah, like I'm right now running a subsidiary company. I still run sales and not marketing anymore, but sales and our
Because you didn't have
certification
enough on your
process.
plate.
Because I didn't. So now I have the subsidiary company of RepairPal called RepairPal Express. And we are doing ADAS calibrations and high-end diagnosis and programming for CarMax and for independent shops and body shops. It's totally B2B, not B2C, because we have a robust network of shops that
Yeah.
we don't need to provide for consumers. But like in terms of the technology, like I have several vans in the Bay Area now, and we go around, and if a shop or CarMax or a body shop can't solve a problem, we come in with the van and we do it. And we do the ADAS calibrations, we do the pre and post scan for body shops. So that's been really interesting. That's been super challenging as well, considering like it's COVID and California was burning down and we had extreme heat. Like, I mean, I could go on and on about that. And I could tell you it's nearly taken me out. But
I'm sure. I remember talking to you. I don't remember which Women in Auto Care conference it was. It was one of them where this was just a kernel of an idea.
Yeah.
You were like, I have this concept, I have this idea.
Yeah.
And now it's become this whole
we
huge...
got vans and I have equipment that you would drool over.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I drool easily.
I have incredible equipment. I have all of it. And I have, a pretty small, but, really experienced staff of people that
That's awesome. No, that's just California, right? Or is it
just in California right now?
Is it going to be going national?
Yeah, hopefully. COVID really slowed us down on that because we were out of the field for 4 months of the year. And then we went back into the field. And then, with COVID, like I have one of my staff on quarantine right now and, because he's not feeling well. So it's like, yeah.
How are shops doing during COVID? Like, do you feel like overall, like shops are doing okay or?
So yeah, how we tell is we monitor ROI and value. And one of our best quarters in company history was Q2. It kind of went back down a little bit in Q3, but like we have seen a year of growth. We're going to end, we're not flat, we're not down, we are up. And that's a win, that's a huge win that, shops are getting a lot of volume. We've managed to still land some really good partnerships to be able to drive more business to those shops. So shops, I think overall are doing well.
That's good to
that
hear.
Being said, the numbers we monitor cancellations, and our biggest cancellation number in the last couple months is shops going out of business.
So there's so much more to talk about. Do you feel like it's the better shops that are staying in business?
Absolutely.
So it was like COVID kind of like thinning the herd a little bit, you feel like?
Yeah, I think it's thinning the herd. Because if you don't have good marketing in place, if you don't have, the right tools and you can't fix all the cars, you're going to struggle.
Right.
Because you need to fix every car that comes in the door right now.
Totally. Okay. In the last minute, words of advice to the younger you.
Just follow your dream. Don't follow somebody else's dream. Follow your dream and make it happen.